Today, I want to show you how to use CSS to customize your WordPress site to make it completely different and to make it match that design you have in mind. I'm going to guide you on the various options you can use to add custom CSS on WordPress and how you can change the colors and the outlook of your WordPress site using CSS. If you're ready, let us start. Welcome back to this CSS WordPress tutorial. If you're watching this, you're most likely looking for a way to customize your WordPress theme to make it look similar to your design. I have a quick outline on what I'm going to discuss in this quick tutorial. I'm going to briefly talk about what is CSS, then talk about CSS and WordPress, basic guidelines of editing CSS in WordPress. Then I am going to outline and explain using specific examples of WordPress customization options, like adding CSS to WordPress theme using the customizer, the default WordPress customizer, using a child theme, which is recommended way to add CSS, and using plugins, specific plugins that allow you to add CSS to your WordPress theme. By the end of this tutorial, you should comfortably use either of these methods to customize your CSS in WordPress. I'm going to show you specific examples of using CSS rules to override the existing theme colors, hide some elements using CSS, change the font size or font settings for your theme, add some spacing, padding, margin, as well as move one item from one side of the website to another. Finally, I'm going to recommend specific resources you can read to understand more about how to use CSS. If you're a beginner in WordPress customization, this will be a good place for you to begin, like I did several years ago when I was learning WordPress. I first learned how to change the colors, padding, margin, then went on to learn how to develop custom WordPress themes. I'm working from my local development environment. I have WordPress installed on my local host. I'm using Laragon as my local host environment. And this is just a basic WordPress installation. I've already customized this theme. I'm using the GeneratePress theme. It's a good theme. It's available for free and premium versions. I like using it in most of my projects because it's easy to use, it's very fast and very reliable, especially if you're going to be building scalable WordPress sites that you want to rank better in the search engine results. I recommend it. I use it for both personal and clients' websites. Back to my website here. CSS basically in WordPress context is what allows us to define the colors, the layouts, the sizes of the font, the type of font. It's basically a styling kind of a language. This styling language allows us to define specific rules on how things appear on the screen. For example, if you look at this button, this read more button, the color is defined in a CSS rule. The hover effect is defined in that CSS rule. CSS is a styling language that is used to style web applications. WordPress comprises of different technologies, putting them together to put up a content management system. WordPress ideally uses HTML as the building blocks, CSS to style, and PHP to give it some kind of dynamic access to the database because it's a CMS. I'll talk more about that in future tutorials. This is a CSS tutorial. To edit WordPress CSS, you need to follow some basic recommendations that WordPress has stated. It's always recommendable when you have your theme installed, you go to themes, you try and install a child theme. In my experience, I believe that's the best approach to dealing with customizing CSS. So one of the ways is you create a child theme, or if the theme you're using uses a child theme, you install the child theme that comes with the theme. If you don't have a child theme, another way to customize CSS on WordPress is to edit the files directly. This will be editing the style sheet for the parent theme. This is not recommended, and I would not recommend it because this is the parent theme. It's going to always mess up once you update, and your changes are going to be overridden once you've updated your theme to a new version. An alternative method, if you don't have a child theme installed on your site, is to use the customizer. The default WordPress customizer comes with a place down here, additional CSS. You can see I've added some CSS styles here to customize my theme to give it this outlook. This is the additional CSS section that you are going to be adding your CSS rules. Those are the two common methods, but there are other options that include adding a specific CSS plugin that allows you to add CSS. Go to plugins, add new, then you can search CSS. You can see there are different kinds of plugins that come up on the screen. Obviously, this is one of the most popular. Simple Custom CSS and JS is one of the most popular CSS and JavaScript customization plugin. I don't want to recommend any specific one because it depends with what you're trying to achieve. I'm going to use this one. So you click on install, you allow it to install, then you activate it once it's installed. Once you activate it, you have the option here to add custom CSS. This simply adds a style sheet to your existing style sheet in your WordPress site, and that's how it's going to carry out the customization. Those are the three specific methods we use to customize CSS in WordPress. I'm going to take the first option, adding CSS, additional CSS using the customizer. So this is the first place we begin. We minimize that. In your WordPress dashboard, once you have your WordPress dashboard here, you look for the option of appearance. Then you go, your theme will have a specific menu option down here. You ignore everything, you go to customize. Customize displays the specific WordPress default customizer. On the options you see here, down here, you'll have additional CSS. If I was to revert this to a different theme, we would still see the same. On my themes here, I can move to the default WordPress theme like 2021. And down here, you will see customize. Once you've changed the theme, you'll see customize. Once you click on it, you'll see the option down here to customize this theme. The additional CSS option comes down there. We can now begin our customization journey. A great place to begin customizing your WordPress theme is to begin by understanding how to use the inspect or developer tool on your browser. I'm going to close this. Then I move to the front end of the website so that I can illustrate how to use the developer tool. I'm on Mozilla. Once you right click, you can see inspect element. This is one of the most important steps, beginning your understanding how to customize your WordPress site. You click on inspect element. In Chrome, it's going to be similar. It will have developer tool. Else, you can use these options here to look for developer tool and developer tools here. It's going to pop up here, down here. So the way this tool works, it has something we call an inspect element here. You see, pick an element from the screen. So like in this example, I would click on that, then hover over any element, and it's going to give me a greens. I can also move this. I can dock this developer tool to give me more screen real estate to the right. Then I can move it down. I can move it to mobile. You can always move it down. Suppose we want to change the color of the body. What I would do, I would simply click here, figure out which rule applies here. You see, it's the page. The page, then you come here, you look for corresponding color. So if you know some bit of CSS, you can also write your own rule. The body, the body has its own rules. These are the styles. So you can create your own rule here to override whatever the existing rule is. Once you create your rule here, you're going to change. Suppose we do this. We do background red, or maybe we give it a green, or maybe we give it something like maybe blue. Or alternatively, you can pick a color on the screen using the color picker. This is the color picker. You can hover on the screen and pick this color, then come down here, add it there. Then you have your site black in color. This tool does not change your CSS. It simply shows you where the CSS rules can be applied, but it does not change your color. It's just some kind of a simulator. It simulates what would happen if you changed your color. So to have this take effect, you need to copy that rule to your existing mode of customization. So I would right click on that, I copy the rule, then I would place that CSS rule in the place I want it to appear. I want it to appear under, I want to add the CSS in the additional CSS down here. If we added the CSS here, then it would override the existing one. Then it would apply the rule once you update. Alternatively, you can add the same rule to your child theme. If you have a specific child theme, you would activate the theme. I want to activate my parent theme. This theme does not have a child theme. I want to activate my parent theme, which is my default, not my default, the theme that I like using most of the times, generate press. Then I don't want to add any rules on this particular theme because it's a parent theme. Once they make the updates, if I update and I added the rules in the CSS parent theme, it's going to be overridden. To avoid that case, I have created a child theme which borrows rules from the parent, and once you activate it, it just works like the parent. It inherits the rules from the parent theme. As you can see from the front side, we have our parent theme here having the same structure with the child theme because the child theme inherits the style sheet from the parent. So to begin customizing our theme, our CSS using the child theme, we are going to use the customizer. Suppose you want to change the color of this title or the color of this paragraph. We are going to begin by figuring out where the child theme style sheet is located. Under themes, you move to theme file editor, and you'll see this is the child theme you're using here. This is the parent theme. Under the child theme, you'll see it has its own place to add custom options. If we wanted to add maybe action and filter hooks, we would use this function .php file that allows us to add custom functions. We can also use this to enqueue new styles. Suppose we wanted to add maybe a library that does not exist in GeneratePress or any other theme. You would enqueue your style sheets or maybe some JavaScript using this file. We are working with the CSS customization. To use the child theme to customize the CSS in WordPress, we are going to be adding the new styles here. Back to the front side, we open our inspect element tool and begin picking these elements. This is the header. It has the class of entry title. So we can create, this is the existing rule. We can create a new rule here, right click, then we add rule. Then we can give it color. Maybe we give it green, or then we can use the color picker to move the color to specific. Maybe we pick that blue that is in between, or maybe we pick orange, whichever the color you have in mind. Then we have to remember, if you're overriding this kind of rule, these are H2 class, so we can maybe add the important rule. Then we'll copy that rule to our existing. Then we can change maybe like the color of this paragraph. We give it maybe a shade of blue. Let's just type blue. Then we can change it to using the color picker. So maybe we can play with the color until we get the right shade without the shade we want. So we would copy this to our child here. Then for CSS, you can add some comments. You say new styles. We can maybe customize our button here. Pick it, then we create new rule. Then maybe we give it a background of maybe black. Then we can maybe do something like a padding of maybe 5 pixels by 20 pixels. Maybe do 25 pixels. You can give it a margin. Give it a general margin of 1 To move it so that it looks good, can float it to the right so that it takes that position. Then maybe we need to make the padding better. Maybe this should be like 10. Then we can maybe give it some kind of border. We give it solid. Then we give it maybe like pixel Let me give it some grayish color. You can give it some border radius, maybe for pics. So once you have this rule ready, you should copy it to your child theme. You remember we are adding the styles to the child theme. So once you add your changes to the child themes, you click on update. If everything went well, once you update, you see the effects will take place. You can go ahead and remove this underline in that link, because that's a link. You can figure out like this is a link, but I think it has the same class, you can see. So we can just remove it with text decoration. We set that to none. We can play around with the color. We make it maybe white, so that our button looks like a true button, not like so dark. Maybe we override it. So in most cases, you're going to be using this. Once you update this, you copy it to your child theme. My emphasis is on on where you place these rules. If you add it to a specific the wrong place, once you update the theme, everything will be gone. That's how you change the colors. We can play around with more elements, like we change the top bar color here. So if you have an existing CSS rule, like in this case, if we select the top bar here, you see the background color is already set. You pick the color you want. Maybe like we give it that color, or green, or whichever color you have in mind, or that matches your design. Maybe you give it a WooCommerce color. So you can simply copy this rule directly to your child theme. Maybe then you comment. You need to make the comments for the specific changes. Maybe you say top bar custom. This reminds you of what happened when you changed that color. You can set a date or anything you have in mind in the comment. So once we refresh here, our color will be that color. We can change the menu or anything else you have in mind. We can add borders. We can change everything that we have in mind. Like if we decided now we want to change the color of this to match this, the color of this paragraph to match the color that we just picked here. So what we will do, we'd first like float this to the right. Then we use our color picker to pick the paragraph. Then we close down some of these rules. We don't need them. Don't need the layout. So this is where we have the color. So you'd simply pick the color using this color picker, hover over the color, and the color will change. So we would copy this rule, just right click, copy the rule, update it here, the first place we changed it. Then update our style sheet and our changes take effect. The same approach would be used to change the color of this button. You remember we just changed this button. So we would use this background color, use this color picker, pick the color, and then update the color code in our child theme. Here, update this, then you update the file. Then once we refresh, our button color changes. Ideally, what you want to pay attention to when you're customizing WordPress CSS is where you place the new custom styles. You don't want to place them in a place where they're going to be messed up. We can copy these rules. Maybe once we can remove them from here. We update these. So we would go back to our default. Then we place them in the customizer. You navigate to customizer, additional CSS, then place the rules here. Publish. The same rules would apply and it would still work. We are placing the rules instead of in the child theme. We are placing the rules, customizer options. You click on customizer options. Then you go to additional CSS. You can place the rules here. If you want some quick edit, in my experience, the best place to place the rules is additional CSS. This file seems to override everything else, including the child theme. In most cases, this file is given precedence, or like it loads, it overrides everything. Like maybe, for example, if we wanted this, we copied this rule to our child theme. Let's see, we change this to black, we update. Let's see what happens. You see, still this one, let me refresh that we are sure about it. The additional CSS style sheet loads, it's the one that takes precedence. If you like, it's the one that is going to be effective, as opposed to one that you add in the child theme. So sometimes this is a very common issue, and you find seem to be something that's not working. So one of the best places to look for these changes is Is there a plugin that is adding custom styles? Because like in this case, this is a scenario I've recreated. We have the paragraph color set in this child theme, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't resort to black because it's in this customizer. So you always want to look for plugins that are adding custom or custom styles that override your customization options. In this case, CSS. Or you always look here, because if we removed that and published to resort to black, this is the rule that's working now. So that's something you need to pay attention to when you're customizing your WordPress CSS. Finally, I want us to copy the same rules, the plugin option. If you remember at the beginning of this tutorial, we installed a plugin that allows us to add custom styles. I'm going to pick these same rules, remove them from additional customizer CSS options. I clear them from the child theme. The child theme is clean. Once we refresh it, it's the default. Then we come to our plugin options here. We click on add custom CSS. Then we say these are the front page. We give them front page CSS. We clean these up. We don't need this. Place it there. Then this plugin seems to have a pro option. Just want to click on publish. Once we click on publish, we look at all custom code. This plugin it shows us this is the CSS option. You can deactivate it here, you can edit, you can trash, and you can also add maybe some JS code. So let's see what happens. It works. You're using this plugin, add additional CSS to your WordPress theme. To give a quick overview of what we've discussed or how to change different elements using CSS on your WordPress theme, I began with my outline here. I discussed what CSS is, outlined how to change, and the take from this tutorial is you always need to have a child theme because it's the best and the safest way that WordPress recommends us to add custom options on WordPress themes. I outlined the 3 ways to add CSS or to carry out CSS customization on your WordPress theme. The first is using the theme customizer. The second is using a child theme. The third is using a specific WordPress CSS code snippets plugin that allows you to add specific code snippet. The third would of course be adding for advanced WordPress developers. It's adding using enqueued scripts. I don't think for this kind of tutorial I want to delve into that, but if you want us to look into it, I can do a complete tutorial in future about how to add CSS, new CSS, even additional CSS, maybe using logic, like in the case you see for theme options. That's what they do. So these are the 3 basic ways to add CSS, additional CSS to your WordPress theme. Then I looked at how to customize colors and I explained with an example. I have not looked at this, something I need to look at right now. And I need to illustrate how to hide elements, how to change the font size color, the font color, the size, adding some padding and margin, then moving elements from one element into another. Let me begin by looking again at how to change the color. I'm going to revert to the default way of customizing WordPress CSS by adding additional CSS in my preferred place, which is the child theme. I'm working with Generate Press. I begin by deleting this code. I don't need it to be displayed. I don't need the plugin. Just like that's what. But before we do this, we can maybe undo and pick the code first. Let's edit. Let's pick this code first. Then we move to trash. You navigate to dashboard, appearance, theme file. Then you place our CSS code here. Make sure everything looks good. Then you update the file. Once you update the file, we visit the front side. We see what's happening. So our styles are working. I want us to illustrate each and every one of these options so that you can easily understand how every one of these options works. For color customization, I've already taken care of that. Like I've displayed how to use the inspect element to pick the specific color and how to change the color. For hiding elements, you can hide elements using the display property of CSS. For example, if I felt like I don't want to see this title here, or maybe this heading here. I would right click, look at inspect element, pick the title using, maybe I don't want this, my name and my as a tagline. So I would pick that, which is a corresponding, if you look at it from the HTML side, is the site description. So this site description, I would just create a rule down here. I would say display none. Display none in CSS removes that display. It removes the element from the screen. If you leave it as without, it can be block, it's going to be normal, visible, going to be block. The other options can look up to the CSS documentation and they're going to be visible once you leave them. But now to remove it from the display, you just need to use the display property, set this to none. It's common to see, like, most WordPress themes come with something like this down here. Most free WordPress themes that you come across are going to have this kind of signature, copyright signature. This is one of the easiest tricks to use to remove that description. You would say site footer, display none, and it would be gone in a minute. So you'd copy this to your child theme down here. Then you would say something like removed footer copyright. So then that comment would remind you what the purpose of that code was. Then you would update. For the case of this rule, we removed that tagline here. You would look for it by clicking here. Then you navigate to where it should be. It should be inside site logo. Expand this, it's the site description. Already it's set to none. So you'd copy this to your child theme. You're using the child theme, customize. You don't want to repeat specific CSS rules that are already loading elsewhere because it's not the best practice to repeat them. So you only want to add those rules that are needed in your child theme. Then you click on update. Then once you update, you see it's gone and our footer copyright message is gone. That's how you would apply the hide element or hiding elements using CSS option in your WordPress theme. Another change you can make using WordPress, using CSS in WordPress, is changing the font size. If you're working with a theme that has a small font size, you can pick the paragraph, then you add the font size here. Okay, that's too huge. Maybe 1 point. Maybe that's what we want to achieve. So we copy this rule, we add it to our theme. You remember we already had this rule that we used to customize the color. So that's how you can change the font. You can also maybe change the font family. You would add a rule like font family, give it a font like Arial, New Times Roman, or whichever font you can have Vertica, any font you have in mind, you can add it using those rules on that paragraph. Suppose we want to work on adding spaces and the padding. Spaces, you're adding padding, margin, and sometimes the border. If we wanted to have some padding on this button, you can see the best way to look at a CSS spacing is to understand the layout, box layout. This is the box layout. CSS box layout, a way of explaining how HTML elements are styled using CSS, border, margin, and padding. The element is surrounded by padding in the innermost part, then margin, and in between them there is a border. Once you select the element, you see in the screen, you see the padding. I've already set the padding to 25 pixels. This is 25, then 10 on top, 10 at the bottom, 25 on the left, on the right, and 25 on the left. This box model allows us to change the spacing of elements on any WordPress or HTML element on a web application. We are working with padding. Maybe we can change this by editing the rule here. If we wanted to have a bigger margin, we would say maybe 2M. Maybe we would do 20 pixels. We do 200 pixels. That's how you change the spaces on your WordPress HTML element. For the margin, you would just do the same. For the padding, you would just do the same. You would change maybe from 25 to, if you wanted to make the button a little longer, maybe you would make this 55. Then you would have, that looks cool. So maybe that would be a good rule to add on our. So we'll change this to 55. Once we change that to 55, If we have our long button, let's refresh and see if it works. So our button looks bigger, or like we've increased the length by increasing the padding on either sides, the left and right. Moving items from one side of the screen to another, you can accomplish this using the float element or display. For this work, you need to understand how display or position property works. That's a little bit advanced. One of the easiest way to illustrate how to move elements on a screen using CSS in WordPress customization is how I moved this button. If you remember previously, it was on the left. I just floated it. Float is one of the most basic ways to move elements across a screen in a web app. There are better ways like positioning. So I just did float right, and the button moves to the left. You need to learn how CSS works for you to apply these customization options to your WordPress theme, either using child theme or additional CSS or the plugin option. So for you to learn, I would recommend you look at additional learning resources where you learn CSS. As a beginner, a good place to begin learning CSS is W3 schools. That's what I used to learn, and I don't find it complex. It's easy, it's straightforward, like teaches you how to, in this example here, how to use margins, and you can try it before you go apply it in your WordPress site or in your customization options. Also, you can Google for CSS tutorials, and one other place I recommend is Mozilla Developer Tools. This also is a good place to start learning CSS. Finally, another resource I would recommend is CSS Tricks, a resource for advanced developers looking for advanced tricks. This is one of the most useful CSS blog out there that you can consider looking at to understand how CSS works. I hope you find this useful and you'll consider supporting us by subscribing. Thank you. I'm sure by now you can customize your CSS on WordPress easily. If you like this kind of content, kindly give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you.